Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar of the Industrial 5G Uncovered series. So I am Abdelatif Benjeloun, Senior 5G Technologist at Digital Catapult, and I will be sharing this webinar today for you. So our webinar today is the third in this series, and we'll focus on understanding and sharing the technical lesson learned from the early deployment of 5G technology within the UK's manufacturing and logistic sectors. So our agenda today will start with guest talk from 5G ACIA, and we will have then a session on showcasing the technical innovation and integration challenges from different projects from the Industrial 5G Testbed and Trials Programme. And after that, we will have a coffee break. So we will have a break to grab up your coffee or tea. And then we will move to a session on panel discussion with different international organizations like 5G ACIA, GSA, TM Forum Network, and 6GIA. And we will close our webinar at 12:30. So before starting our webinar program and to give you an introduction, I would like to give you a short glimpse overview about the Industrial 5G Testbed Trials, which is a program funded by the UK DCMS, the Department of Culture, Media and Sports. And this program is coordinated by Digital Catapult, and it encompasses 8 projects, as you can see on your screen. It's a very rich program where you can find in each project the participation from both the telecom side companies and the players, and also the manufacturing and logistics, and more generally the industrial players. And the program is tackling a plethora and very rich number of use cases, both for the manufacturing and the logistics sides. And the main objective is to show all the capabilities of 5G in the industrial sectors beyond the mobile broadband use cases. So it's a very rich program, and we will learn more about it today through the different presentation from the project that you can see here. And we will go now to our first agenda item, which is a guest presentation from Dr. Andreas Müller, who is the head of communication and network technology within Bosch. But he's also the chair and the general chair of 5G ACIA. So he will give us a good presentation about the activities of 5G ACIA. So I would like to ask Dr. Andreas to join us, to switch on his camera and also unmute, so he can and also share with us his presentation. Andreas, if you can join us.
Yeah, I'm here, so you should also be able to see me. So thanks a lot, Abdelatif, for the short introduction, and also thanks for inviting me to this interesting webinar today. Pleasure to be part of it, and to start this with an overview presentation of 5G ACIA, and now you should also be able to see the slides. As Abdelatif has mentioned, I have 2 roles in my day job. I'm driving the 5G activities, and recently also more and more 6G activities already within Bosch. But today I'm here especially in my capacity as the general chair of 5G ACIA, the 5G Alliance for Connected Industries and Automation, which has developed into the globally leading organization for driving and shaping industrial 5G. And I have the pleasure to give you a little bit an overview in case you are not familiar with 5G ACIA yet, what we are exactly doing and working on, and also to outline some of the recent activities and results. So I want to start, and I hope, and I guess this probably well understood by most people in the audience, why 5G actually matters to the manufacturing industry. We have the development towards 5G. So 5G is a reality today, at least in the consumer business. And the main difference compared to the previous generations is that it's not just about connecting mobile phones in one way or the other, but it's about connecting all kinds of things in the Internet of Things. Now, at the same time, we have the developments in the industrial domain towards more flexible production, the smart factory of the future, or we also often refer to this as the fourth industrial revolution. And the basis for this is basically connectivity. So to bridge the physical world of production with the digital world of the IT industry, and connecting things, of course, is the basis for all this. So now it's quite natural then to bring both these major developments together. So to use 5G in a factory in order to lift Industry 4.0 to the next level and to realize unprecedented levels of flexibility, efficiency, productivity, and also ease of use. And that's basically what makes 5G so interesting and attractive to the manufacturing industry. If we do that, there is quite a variety of different use cases that can be realized. This is just an overview of different categories, basically, of use cases. 5G is a natural choice, of course, for connecting mobile or portable assets like forklifts, automated guided vehicles, but also smart tools. If you want to connect moving or rotating parts like a robot arm or things where we're using slip rings or track chains today. Wireless sensors for condition-based monitoring, for predictive maintenance. If it's wireless, then it's very easy to deploy them. Also human-machine interaction, for example, for connecting AR or VR glasses to support the people working in a factory in an intuitive manner. We can use the 5G network also for locating devices, so for positioning and tracking, asset tracking, for instance. For achieving a highly modular production with different production modules, which can be easily combined like Lego bricks in order to adjust the things you are producing in a very short time. Retrofitting is a very big topic, so to upgrade existing machines and production lines in an easy way. But maybe the biggest advantage of 5G is really that it's a one-size-fits-all solution potentially, so that we can use the same system for different applications with rather different requirements, where we would use different wireless technologies today, like Wi-Fi, Zigbee, 6LoWPAN, and others. So there is also the potential to support a convergence, basically. And convergence per se is also of value because it reduces the complexity and also the heterogeneity in a factory, and may thus also reduce the total cost of ownership. So that's a very high level overview, of course. Now, what is the role of 5G ACIA? 5G ACIA has been established in April 2018, so about 4 years ago, and serves as a global forum for bringing all relevant stakeholders in the emerging industrial 5G ecosystem together. This primarily includes the so-called OT industry, so the operational technology industry, the classical industrial players like Bosch, like Siemens, like ABB, and so on. And on the other hand, the ICT industry with the classical telco players, network operators, network infrastructure vendors, chipsets manufacturers, and these kinds of players. And of course, we also have academic members, which bring in more the long-term perspective, the academic view, which is important as well. And here you can see basically the overarching goals of 5G ACIA is really to establish a common language between the two different domains. It's about reflecting the needs of the OT industry in standardization and regulation. Typical representatives of the OT industry are not necessarily highly active in 3GPP, for example. So here 5G ACIA helps to simplify an engagement and to bring in the views. We are analyzing, of course, what we can do with 5G in manufacturing and how to do it, so that we come up with a joint vision, basically, and different building blocks to make this vision become a reality. We have now quite a number of activities focusing on certification aspects, on testing needs. That's important to get the ecosystem up and running. And also, of course, we are doing a lot of promotion of industrial 5G so that we educate the industry at large and interested parties, as we are doing it today, in order to make people aware of the potential, but also the challenges and opportunity. So we started in 2018 with 26 member organizations. As of today, we are 90. You can see the logos of our members. It's really a good mixture between the OT industry and ICT industry. and also members really from different regions around the world. We are very happy that also Digital Catapult is a member, but you can see there are many more. Yeah, everybody's also invited to join us. So it's an open organization. As long as a company and organization is supporting the goals of 5G SIA, we are happy to welcome you amongst us. So that's one slide showing the structure that we have. We have 5 different working groups. We are where the actual work is happening. These have been always virtual meetings, and there are many of them. So we have a rather high activity level. We have done 4 to 5 plenary meetings per year where we are reviewing the progress, where we are taking decisions on new activities to start and also approval of results, for example. We have once a year General Assembly, which specifies the working procedures and things like this. And we have the board, which has the meta view on everything and is starting maybe strategic activities and things like this. And of course, our 5G ACI office supporting the day-to-day activities. Now, today is basically a world premiere, if you want, because we have just adjusted our working group structure in November last year, and we have not really communicated this externally yet. So you are the first ones that learn about this. Here you can see basically the new working group structure. It's still 5 working groups as before, but we made some adjustments also because we, are already on the way of the journey, right? So if you start an activity, there are other priorities than if you have already worked on this for 4 years. That's what we have done so far. So that's why we adjusted this a little bit. We still have a working group doing work on use cases requirements. So there we're always looking ahead, right? Because there are new use cases and requirements coming up. We have a new working group now focusing on ecosystem development also, and regulatory framework. This includes spectrum-related topics, but also topics like certification, concepts and things like this. We have a working group focusing on system architecture and integration aspects. So how to bring 5G together with what we already have in manufacturing. So there are established communication technologies like time-sensitive networking, established middleware solutions like OPC UA, and somehow this has to seamlessly work together with 5G system. And these are things we are looking into this working group 3. We also have a working group on liaisons and marketing. We also have Sylvia Liu among us in this webinar today. She's actually the chair of this working group, reaching out to other organizations and making sure that we are well aligned with all of them. And the last working group is also basically new. The scope is new. It's Industrial 5G in Practice, where we want to support the exchange of best practices, of lessons learned, and so on among the players. And that's, of course, something that is getting more and more important because now we have more and more components, networks, and so on that can be used so that we also get here the ecosystem basically then up and running. So that's on a high level what we, how we have structured 5G ACIA. This is a little bit an overview of some recent publications that we have, that you can also download from our website, 5G-ACIA.org. And this also gives you a little bit of impression of the topics we're focused on. Due to the limited time that we have today, I really want to just briefly go through this. And then if you're interested in more details, then feel free to have a look at those white papers and maybe to actively reach out to us afterwards. But for example, we've done quite some solid work on combining time-sensitive networking, the next generation real-time Ethernet with 5G. 5G system will support many of these TSN features out of the box, which allows for a very smooth integration of 5G with wired TSN systems. We've had an activity here focusing on digital twins, how we can make use of the concept of digital twins also for integrating 5G networks, 5G devices, so that they have their own digital twin. And with these digital twins, you can then automate certain things like the configuration of the network. We've done a lot of work on looking at what kind of capabilities, for example, should be exposed from a 5G network to a manufacturer so that you can easily monitor the system and easily integrate it in your existing enterprise IT infrastructure. Security, of course, is an important topic. Performance testing, so that we have a common understanding how to actually evaluate and validate the performance of a real-world deployment. We have some recently published white papers on quality of service concepts of 5G, so how these concepts can support what we need in industrial scenarios like cyclic traffic and things like this. And we also have summarized basically relevant capabilities in general that 5G provides for supporting industrial IoT type use cases and applications. There's also a short precision paper already on our view on 6G. Of course, 6G is still very far away. We are still very busy and will remain very busy with 5G for the years to come, but still in the research community, at least the first initiatives have already started. And we want to make sure that this is going into the right direction. For example, that there is a smooth migration path also from 5G to 6G, which then ensures investment security, for example. And there's another recent publication on service level specifications. So where we have brought all the members together and thought about, okay, what does this have to look like? The service level specification is basically the technical part of a service level agreement, and provide some guidance how to specify this, what should be included there, and how this could be done. Again, really a very brief overview. If you want to know the details, then just feel free to visit our website here. So in the last 2 minutes that I still have, I want to give you a brief overview also of some of the 5G ACI testbeds that we have launched last year. So this also something still relatively new, that we established a testbed framework so different members can get together, build up something, implement some use cases, and then also share some of the results with all the other members. And if you're doing this according to some guidelines that we have defined, then you get this official 5G ACIA testbed label, as you can see here. So far, we have 7 testbeds approved. I included 6 of them in the slides here. One of them is run by ABB and Ericsson in Sweden, in Kista. It's an Ericsson factory, actually. So they are looking, for example, into cloud robotics. So how to offload some intelligence of such a robot to a local edge cloud and make the connection using 5G, but also then augmented reality and these types of applications, where you always want to be mobile and wireless. So is a key enabler for that, of course. There's another one in Aachen, in Germany, by Ericsson, Fraunhofer, and u-blox. You can also see this 5G Smart. It basically refers to a European research project, and these testbeds are basically part of this 5G Smart project. So here they're more looking into using sensors, for example, sensors being part of quickly rotating components for monitoring the production, for optimizing it, make it more adaptive, and also a general multi-sensor platform for doing this. We have another activity here in Munich, driven by Huawei and the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence. They're looking into combining artificial intelligence with 5G, and also for things like quality control, that you can do this maybe while carrying things from A to B, so that you convert transportation time into value creation time, which is very good, of course. There's another one that I'm very familiar with because that's in the Bosch semiconductor factory in Reutlingen in Germany. And we've been doing this together with Ericsson as well. You can see some pictures here from the factory. So we analyzed here if there's any interference, for example, from the 5G system, if the manufacturing processes, which are very sensitive in semiconductors, if they are affected in some way or not. We did some channel measurements, but also then realizing use cases like these automated guided vehicles with intelligence offloaded to a local cloud, and also then TSN industrial Ethernet over 5G, which in general is a very important building block here. And then the last 2 ones here, this is Fraunhofer and Huawei in Berlin, in Germany. So they're looking into this really critical use cases and capabilities of 5G, ultra reliable low latency communication, how this may be used for fixed and mobile robots. And we have Fraunhofer and a startup, basically 5G2Go in Nuremberg in Germany. They have built up a first Open RAN-based testbeds for industrial 5G, so softwareized infrastructure basically with open interfaces, which per se is interesting. And they're also looking especially into 5G-based positioning so that we can also locate devices with a rather high accuracy and also in indoor environments using the same infrastructure. So quite a number of interesting activities. Also here, of course, I could just scratch the surface. And if anybody's interested to learn more about those, then feel free to reach out to us. And we, and especially the testbed owners, certainly would be happy to provide you with more information. With that, I'm basically almost at the end already. Just want to promote again 5G ACIA. So feel free to visit our website. You can download all the white papers there. And 5G ACI really is about bringing all relevant stakeholders together. It's about jointly driving and shaping industrial 5G. And therefore, I would like to invite everyone again to join us, to become part of the discussions and to make a difference basically to the future of industrial 5G. And with that, I'm done already with my short presentation. Thanks again, Abdelatif, for the kind invitation. And with that, I give it back to you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for this insightful and rich presentation about the activities of 5G ACIA. So I'm sure that our audience have learned a lot of things and get inspired to make a link between what's ongoing in the UK ecosystem and the 5G ACIA activities. So thank you again, and I will ask you just to switch off your camera and also unmute. And at the meantime, I will be sharing my screen again. So I hope that you can see my screen. All is okay? Yes. So and now we will move to our next session on showcasing the innovation, technical and integration challenges of the projects from the industrial 5G testbed and trials. And here we will have 5 presentations, as you can see on your screen, coming from 5 projects from our program. And we will start with the 5G Encode with Paul Cooper, Vice President of Engineering from Zeta Networks, and Antoni Caridis, Managing Director at Mativision. So I would like to invite Paul to join us.
Good morning.
Hello, hi Paul, good morning. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and at the meantime I will stop sharing my screen. I'll ask you to also
share. Okay,
yeah,
here we go. Okay, so 5G Encode is an industrial manufacturing use case project. So let's move forward and just take a quick reminder on the use cases in the program. So we've got 5 main use cases: augmented reality, virtual reality, in-factory asset tracking, automated preforming cell, and liquid resin infusion. My colleague Antoni Caridis will talk about augmented reality and virtual reality in more detail in about 5 minutes time or 4 minutes time. Just a quick reminder that asset tracking in the factory is where things are and finding them quickly and showing benefit there. The preforming cell is a robotic arm for printing complex models, and the liquid resin infusion is the flow of liquid through a mold for something like a carbon fiber construction. We have 3 support cases where we put in probes to do 5G network traffic monitoring. We looked at single and multi-domain slicing in a 5G network and in the IT network itself. And then we did a feasibility study on remote robotics, so controlling robots in one location that are operating in another. And let's move forward. So we have 2 locations for the 5G Encode program. One is called NCC, which is the headquarters of National Composite Centre, based in Emerson Green, Bristol. And then there was a sub-site called NCCI, which was based in Bristol, but about 6-7 kilometres from the headquarters. So we put 5G into both sites so that we could undertake the use cases. Most of the use cases were done in the main headquarters site, but for the multi-domain slicing element, we needed a sub-site. A reminder on the technology. So we put in a 5G standalone system into both locations using Open RAN technology. We had 100 megahertz bandwidth trials and innovation licenses from Ofcom, and we were operating in the 3.6 to 3.8 frequency range. Obviously, all this work wasn't done just by Zeta. There were a number of collaborators. I just want to remind you of who those players were. We have Mativision, who are going to come, Antoni's going to present next. But we also had the University of Bristol, Platane, Toshiba, Telefonica, Exedion and Solvay involved in the delivery of each of the use cases, and they each had a sort of a part in one or more use cases. Where we are in the program today, we've wrapped up the use case execution. That was done at the early December in 2021. We are now in the reporting phase. Reports are coming in for review at the moment. We will move into lessons learned in a couple of weeks' time before we go into the main review with DCMS and aim for project closeout at the end of March. Couple of open risks in our budget that we've learned along the way, sorry, in our program that we've learned along the way, as we've had to manage budget very carefully. So other programs might want to make a note of this to keep a very close eye on where your change requests need to be. And we also are working our way through what an end of project audit looks like and understanding those actions. And we're doing that early so that we can close on time. So these are lessons learned as we've been going. Challenges and lessons learned generally. 5GSA as a technology was quite immature when we started. Both the RAN and packet core vendors were in the process of developing their solution. We had a number of upgrades that we had to manage along the way, so we had to allow time in the schedule to do that. We also, because being an open RAN system, we had three main vendors in the network, this network implementation itself. There was a switching provider, a RAN provider, and a core provider. We needed to allow time for interoperability testing and management. And again, that was something that caught us a bit left field, so we had to add some time into the schedule to do that. With 5G, we introduced, the network moves from a network timing protocol to precision timing protocol. Precision timing protocol, by its very name, has to be tuned, and it has to be set up very carefully. If you don't get it right, you get DU stability issues as your eCPRI has a high level of packet drops. So again, your switching and your RAN vendor need to be brought together and make sure you tune the network. And it's all dependent on making sure you've got your GPS receiver up on the roof, so it's got a clear line of sight to the satellites, and then you get the cable lengths measured and get your PTP tuned up. If you don't do that first, then your 5G is going to be a bit shaky when you turn it on. We also had device availability issues back in April 2021. There were not many devices that could be purchased off the open market, either end user phone equipment or the customer premises equipment, CPEs. The device availability has improved through 2021. I've got a summary at the end that I put in the deck here for reference. Most of the devices, though, still have to be put into one sort of engineering mode or another to make them work with the 5G SA networks. They're clearly designed NSA markets at the moment, or non-standalone. In terms of bandwidth needs, we found also that 5G, when you turn it on in an enterprise environment or in the factory, really shows up where there's weaknesses in the corporate IT network that's supporting that factory. So for example, if you've got an ISP link that's only 1 gig into the factory, and then you start doing external speed tests down through your factory, you can wipe out the ISP and block other users on the network. So again, you have to take care of that and make sure that the IT department put some limits on what you can and cannot do through their network. Radio performance wise, we saw in our 5GSA environment 410 megabits downlink and 50 megabits uplink. These are where the RAN operators at the moment. They've got a roadmap for higher downlink and uplink throughputs and measures. What we have seen though is when you start putting 4K and 8K cameras onto a network, they have a very high uplink demand. So we're going to work in with the RAN vendors to change the profile on 5G, so you've got more uplink capacity than initially planned in the designs. And device fit to enterprise or to a factory environment. Ruggedized sensors and devices, it's a limited market at the moment. There are a few coming on, and I'm sure that will grow as we go forward with 5G. I think I'm about up on time, so I'm not going to go through the device status. I'll leave it here for those that are interested. You can pick that up from the recording afterwards. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Antoni, who's going to take you through the AR and VR lessons learned. Antoni, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting us to this presentation. I'll try to be as fast as I can because it's only 2 minutes left now. So please, Paul, can we go right away to the first slide? Mativision has been involved in this project in 2 of the use cases, the AR Training Simulator Demonstrator and the VR Training Demonstrator. I'm sure you will receive this presentation, so I won't spend any time describing them, and we'll jump right off to the conclusions. So the AR Training Demonstrator, it was totally different to the VR Training Demonstrator in the sense that one of them was based on training kind of facility like a remote training classroom, while the AR Demonstrator was focusing on providing an expert helper to trainees on a particular process. Next, please, Paul. So if we jump into the conclusions for the VR use case demonstrator, what we could say is that we have until this time proven that the performance of a package like this was very satisfactory for delivering a remote training to groups of users. The learning course proved to be pretty straightforward received. The trials that we did showed that there were improvements to be looked forward to, and we can have a comparison between the conventional training courses and the one that is based on 360-degree VR. But we need to run more tests until the end of the project to confirm what's the comparison between these two. Next one, please. The bandwidth that we received from the 5G network was really the differentiating factor here, and it supported having many trainees. But I would say, jumping very much forward, that the most important part that we found out was that the two-way communication we developed between the trainer and the trainees proved to be probably the one point that made the remote training facility a success. Next, please. The AR was a bit more, I would say, challenging for us. And although the performance of the package was proven to work, the immersive and practical training course using augmented reality was completed right now, but we still have identified improvements that have to be carried out, and we will try to complete this before the end of the project. Next one, please. Apologies for running very fast, but I had 7 slides and I'm trying to compress everything. We used a sizable group of users for the AR training, but we didn't prove how many or how big that group can be, and this is left to be tried out towards the end of the project. The feedback we received was very positive, although we realized that the quality of the instructional content is really a very big factor in whether training through AR is received positively or not. We need to correlate the results we got from the AR case to the results we got to the VR case, and go through some improvements to make sure that the acceptance of both are on a similar level. Next, please. And finally, what was very interesting for us to find out was that the expert helper application itself did not seem to receive a lot of improvement because of the 5G network. It seemed to us that the bandwidth that we had for the 4G and the 5G was not really the point that made the difference, which indicates that when we are allowed to use more people in the group of the AR training, that will probably showcase the difference between the 4G network and the 5G network. We also found out that trying to introduce the people properly to the AR headset is very important in order to have a successful run through the courses. And also the type of AR kit that is used indicated that it helps in making the course acceptable. So I'll close my presentation here. I took a bit more time than necessary. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I assume that the presentation will be made public and available to all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul and Antoni. That was a really very rich presentation. I can understand that the time is not enough to present such big projects. That's normal, but this is the constraints of the webinar. And now we'll move to our next presentation from 5GEM project with Pablo Avila, who is a solution architect on private networks at Vodafone. So Pablo, please. Okay, so you are sharing your screen, you are unmuted, you have just to share your slides and start.
All right, can you see it already?
Yes.
So hi everyone. Yeah, thanks Abdelatif. So as Abdelatif just presented, my name is Pablo Avila. I work as a private network solution architect at Vodafone, and today I'm going to be covering the lessons learned on network design, security, and integration for the 5GEM project. So on the first slide here, we can see a quick network snapshot about what we've delivered. So you can see here, we have 2 locations that have been treated as one single private network. On the bottom left of the presentation, we have 4 premises in Danton, and on the bottom right, we have TWIs in Cambridge. For this project, we've delivered a 5G NSA network in which we've provisioned our own private spectrum. So we've used the band 38 for the LTE anchor and the band N78 for the 5G leg. In terms of radio, we had some indoor coverage requirements that have been provided by making use of Ericsson's Radio Dot suite of products. And from a core perspective, what we did is at Ford, we deployed a full NSA or LTE core, whilst at TWI, we only deployed the local data breakout components of it. So mainly the SP gateway to allow them to consume data locally. Then both locations were connected over a private MPLS link whose main purpose was basically to carry the signaling traffic across both locations. From a user equipment perspective, we connected various machinery, laser welding machines, vacuum furnaces, laptops, HoloLens glasses, etc. As you can imagine, not all of these devices are cellular native in the sense that you cannot just put a SIM card and plug it into the network. So we had to also rely on 5G gateways. For this, we worked with a series of partners like Nokia, Cradlepoint, and HMS. Then we did also provide some outbound only internet breakout capabilities to satisfy some of the use cases of this project, such as the HoloLens remote assist calls that were allowing field engineers wearing HoloLens glasses to have AR power calls with remote experts sitting outside of the network. And lastly, we also had to provide a solution to allow Vodafone's and Ericsson's NOCs to remotely connect into the network in a secure manner. By that, we provide an IPsec tunnel over our MPLS network. Then if we go to the network lessons learned of the project, basically on the top right, we can see the key highlights of what we deployed. As I've just said, this is an NSA deployment using our private spectrum, so band 38 and N78 with 20 and 15 megahertz carriers respectively. With this, we managed to achieve top downlink speeds of around 600 megabits per second, top uplink speeds of around 43 megabits per second, and latency figures of around 10 to 15 millisecond. As you kind of see already in this data, the first point that I wanted to highlight, and has already been discussed, is that the difference between the downlink and uplink speeds. So networks have traditionally been architected in a way to favor more the consumer behavior, which requires much more downlink than uplink capacity. But this, however, is no longer the case with industrial private deployments, right? So I think it is important that RAM vendors reconsider the TDD configuration patterns that they support. So for example, on the right-hand side, I've included a table from the 3GPP standards, the 36.211, that basically details the 7 different TDD configuration possibilities that we have. Each of them details basically what percentage of the available time slots we can dedicate for each type of traffic, either downlink, uplink, or the special subframes. As you can see there, by the time we deployed the network, only the configuration 1 and 2 was available. But we can see quickly that number 0 and number 6 are able to dedicate a higher percentage of the available subframes to uplink capacity, and hence would help us to provide a higher uplink for the customer. Then another point that I wanted to call out, and it's also been mentioned in the previous presentation, the device ecosystem for 5G private networks, although it's ramping up, still needs to mature. I think there is a responsibility on private networks providers on lobbying OEM vendors into supporting private networks PLMNs, so 999s, and also to support more ENDC configurations. So we had a hard time at the beginning on finding devices that were working appropriately in the NSA configuration with the bands that we proposed. So I think there is a bit more work that needs to be done here. And then another thing that I wanted to call out is be aware of OPC's potential NAT conflicts, right? As part of the use cases, we had to connect various OPC-enabled PLCs. So one was sitting in the customer local environment, whilst another one was sitting behind the 5G gateway. We did have a hard time of making this to work. The OPC wasn't liking that much the fact that the 5G gateway was NATing the connection into the outer NPN world. We tried configuring port forwarding, but that didn't seem to do the trick. So at the end, we had to basically connect the 5G gateways in a pass-through mode, so effectively allocating the one IP address or the same IP address into the user equipment. That seemed to do the trick. On the other hand, we also had MQTT brokers at Ford, which this worked seamlessly. We didn't have these type of issues. Then in regards to security lessons learned, I think the key highlight is that this is not a networks only problem, right? When we talk about security, we need to think beyond the network connectivity layer. We need to have multiple controls on every system component that works within the solution. So at 5GM, we develop a framework that basically we use in the project that was presented and well received to DCMS. That kind of collects 9 different aspects of the solution that need to be accounted for when deploying private networks to ensure that the solution meets certain security criteria. These are adhering to 3GPP security standards. So if you're thinking about deploying a private network, you need to make sure that the vendor you go for meets the latest 3GPP security standards. System hardening of the private network equipment. The private network provider needs to make sure that the access is secure to both the radio and core hardware. Then virtual traffic segregation. It's important that we make use of the well-known logical segregation techniques such as APNs, VPNs, firewalling, VRFs, etc., etc. Then secure remote operations and maintenance access. So we're going to have to let some inbound traffic coming in to remotely manage the solution. So it's important that we do this in a secure manner, ideally from a centrally located security appliance that controls all these inbound flows. And then there are some other aspects that lay more with the different technology partners and the customer itself, such as a physical security into the building and server rooms, industrial machine security, customer environment integration. So we will be expecting like a security appliance segregating the customer environment from the NPN1, secure data sharing, and end-to-end overlay security in data integrity. And the last slide, real quick. I think the first take on the integration lessons learned are that mobile private networks are not like Wi-Fi networks. So while most of the customers tend to have reasonably skilled IT department that is very capable of managing Wi-Fi networks and other LAN networks, this is not often the case with cellular, right? Private networks are not plug and play. They require site surveys, they require radio planning and installation, there's a SIM provisioning process, etc., etc. And also, I think as the operators and private network providers, we need to evangelize the customer, right? We need to be able to explain what are the difference between different architectures, such as isolated versus hybrid deployments, the different roaming scenarios, where does MEC fit into the picture, etc., etc. Then the second point is just be aware of excessive infrastructure reusability. So while we might be tempted in other type of deployments to reuse part of the infrastructure that's already in place and provided by the customer, cellular networks are a bit more sensitive, and we need to be a bit more careful, right? Things like front-haul and backhaul fiber runs should be provided by the operator to ensure interoperability, remote connectivity solutions as well, just to ensure more flexibility. Racks should be mounted and provided by the operator, and local customer infrastructure needs to adhere to private network specifications. We've seen some problems in the live deployment in which we were seeing very low throughput, and after lots of troubleshooting sessions, we found out that it was an incompatible switch at the customer end. And then last but not the least, another thing that we should be aware of is the environmental conditions of the network. So we tend not to worry too much about these parameters when we do other type of deployments, but in private networks, sometimes we might be asked to deploy such networks in harsh environments. So not only production facilities, but we might be asked to deploy this in offshore wind farms, on offshore oil rigs, or locations that require ATEX compliant devices. So it's more important than ever to pay attention to these and make sure that the hardware we deploy is in environmentally controlled locations with specific parameters about humidity, temperature, airflow, etc., etc. I think that's it from me. If you need to get in touch, please, you can use that email. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pablo, very much for this excellent presentation. It was really very rich in terms of network design learning and also security lessons. I learned a lot of things, a lot of points I have taken, but we can share with you later on. But now I will be moving to the next presentation from the 5G port projects with Loretta Liu, who is Principal Service Architect at 3UK. So Loretta, you can please switch on your camera and unmute your microphone, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Loretta, and I'm service and also solution architect in this project. For this 10 minutes plan, I will introduce a few minutes for the background and also the aiming for this project, and also our solution for this project. But I will focus on the test result we got from lab and also some challenge. So I will focus on these 3 slides, but after this, if I have still time, I will give, some experience we got from this project. So it's not limited on the lessons learned or challenge. And I hope during this 10 minutes, we can explore more than, lessons learned and some experience as well. Okay, let us start. Okay, in this project, we have mainly 4 members deployed this project together, Port Phillip and Hutchinson 3 UK together with our group, Hutchinson Group, and Cambridge University, who is responsible for the AI and machine learning for the predictive maintenance, and Blue Mesh solution for the IoT platform. The aiming for this project, of course, we work with Port Phillip more than 10 years for 4G deployment, and we deployed the 4G enterprise network at Port Phillip already. So for this project, we aim to get, based on the 4G network, how we improve all the network performance and reduce the latency for our customer. And by end of this project, we hope we can present a solution and lessons learned and a real solution, not based on the trial, it's based on the harsh environment deployment for our customer for their 5G deployment in the future. So the network, this is why in this network selection at the very, very beginning, we defined to deploy an isolated non-public platform. So not NPN network. This is also known as a private network. The reason why we didn't use 5G NSA, because we deployed 5G NSA in 2018, end of 2018 in private network in UK. And the latency we got from a harsh environment cannot, align with customers' requirement, less than 50 milliseconds on RTT environment. So this is the reason when we start this project and we defined very, very clearly, this must be a 5G NSA network. So I will give you more details what the network looks like and also the logical architecture. And in the use case, we got two main use cases. One is a condition monitoring and also predicted maintenance in the key crane. The key crane is on the key site docking area. And also we have a second use case is for remote control and real-time communication for the PLC and the CCTV. And this use case is based on the RTG crane on the port. And the requirement for this project has two key requirements. One is a high availability. As you know, as many people mentioned, a consumer-based 5G. For example, we're running more than 10 hours or 24 hours. If you have a one packet loss, maybe it means nothing for for this network. But for our enterprise, especially for the crane remote control use case, for example, the protocol we use, open safety or profit safety, this protocol is not allowed any packet loss happened within 24 hours. So it's a very, very, sensitive network and also high availability requirement. We got some test result I will share later on. So the 5G SA, I think from the test, we are in the trial phase, but from the test in the lab, it looks very nice, very good. And for the actual high-low throughput, especially for uplink requirement, for this project, the uplink, minimum uplink is a 40 Mbps, but we're trying to, see possibility whether we can achieve 100 Mbps for uplink. So this is a comparison with existing warehouse system. It's a wired system what deployed at Port Felixstowe. So there has several technology we deployed to improve uplink throughput. And also the latency, actual low latency, we tested in the lab is between 6 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds. But we are also very keen to see the result during the trial. I mean, at outdoor environment. We hope we can get the latency maintained between 10 to 15 milliseconds. We are still waiting for our result for the next milestone deployed at Port Felixstowe. So this is the three key requirements for the 5G automation at Port Felixstowe. The detailed user case and protocol we use for real-time remote control, and this is a yacht crane, is called RTG crane, deployed with a Siemens. Application protocol is open, is a Profinet over Ethernet, but the detailed protocol and also the challenge we got is a profit safe in this project. I have a slide to explain in the details. And the uplink, as I mentioned, the minimum is 40, and also we are looking for uplink up to 100 Mbps. For the real-time camera, HD cameras used as a RTG. And monitoring and predicted maintenance use case, we have 12 key crane deployed at one docking area. So all these 12 key crane will collect the all the information by the IoT deployed by Blue Mesh. And all this data will fit into 5G and transfer to Cambridge University by a public Google Cloud. And the user case is to get all the OPC data from existing Port Phillip IT infrastructure. And this is what we deployed for this project for 5G SA network for these two user case. For the sensor, for the IoT, this part, and this is a layer 3 network feeding directly to our 5G SA. And for this crane on the RTG camera and PLC, they are Ethernet network fit into IP-based 5G network. So this is two different application, what we deploy at port. And for 5G non-public network, we have a pool of CPE to be selected for this user case. But we got the best solution and test result from one of the vendor named WNC Industrial ODU, and they use Quectel, and also we have a Quectel modular to be deployed. But after the test at our lab, we think WNC is the best solution, especially for their IP pass-through solution. So we have some high requirement and also challenge, as mentioned from Waterfall as well. So how to integrate Ethernet into IP-based. So WNC, they have deployed a customization software to fit our project. For the radio and call, this is a 5G NR radio deployed by Ericsson and also their SA private network call on-premise solution deployed at Port Phillip. The one I want to highlight for the radio is we got Ofcom authorized shared access spectrum, and this is a continuous 100 Hertz bandwidth running in N77. So this is a good news. We got this is a production Ofcom license to be used for Port Phillip. This is a medium power spectrum. So we deployed 4G at Port Phillip currently. So there is no any conflict for these two network. One is running on in 4G, another one 12 running in 5G. So this is an experience how we work together with Ofcom, and we are very welcome to any questions regarding the spectrum to be used at enterprise. And also we are very happy to share our experience on the different type of spectrum to be used on non-public network, especially for industrial automation user case. And for the call, this is a standalone Ericsson call. Nothing, how to say, it's very, very standard. We didn't deploy many features, but we are looking for some new features. For example, the TSN and also ultra low latency end-to-end ultra low latency with Ericsson. So this is some ongoing discussion with our vendor together with Ericsson and also WNC. And from the IT infrastructure with our customer, they have a remote control room is called RCOS, which deployed by Siemens. And also we have a Google public cloud, input all the data, collect all the data from sensor, deploy on key crane, and transferred to Cambridge, University Cambridge for their AI system. And this is the predicted maintenance user case. So all the data collected from the sensor and use Raspberry Pi collected together and transmit by our WNC CPE. This is an auto unit CPE. And so all the data collect from 5G and based on the relay server from customers' IT platform and input into the data collection and also process. So this is very, very standard data process for how to collect the data, store the data, and also train the data. And Cambridge University Cambridge, they work on this AI and also machine learning. So this is still on developers phase. So we are doing some testing at portfolio store. So this project, we can't share much details because we only collect a few data only for a couple of weeks. So all the data is not ready to do the process by the University Cambridge. And for the remote control user case, we deployed two radio sites with 3 sectors. And what I would like to highlight in this project, as I mentioned, the bandwidth we use 100 megahertz, and also the TDD pattern we deployed as pattern 3, and we modify many SS pattern as well. So for example, 383 and 3110. Because as we deployed as a 4G at portfolio store on TDD mode more than 10 years, so we are very, very familiar with all this pattern. So when we start this project, we defined TDD pattern together with SS pattern straight away with our vendor. We pass our requirement, how to boost the uplink throughput. So this is, we don't have a much challenge on this particular questions or area, but this is a help to get the uplink throughput and also up to 100 Mbps. And also when we select the UE, we have very clear requirement. The UE gain, antenna gain must be up to 8 dBi, and the best solution and our preference is based on 11 dBi. The reason is to maintain the network stable and get best signal in the harsh environment. This is mandatory on this, how to say, vendor selection and also the product selection. And the transmission we use also help to boost our uplink throughput. We deployed 2x2 MIMO for uplink. So this is a negotiated parameter defined by the UE and also the radio. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, these are 4 features what we deployed and designed all help to improve our uplink throughput. And also security, what I would like...
yeah. Just because we are running off time, if you can wrap up, please.
Okay. Okay, I skip this security.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the test result we got for the throughput first. As you see the result for uplink, because our protocol is running on UDP. So this is up to 100 Mbps. For the TCP, we also got some high throughput around 137 at the lab. So there has some compression, how we improve the throughput using different features. For example, 2x2 MIMO and 256 CRAM. You see it's increased nearly 30% on the uplink throughput. So customers are very happy to get this more than 100. We are also looking to get the same result at portfolio store, a real deployment, I mean outdoor deployment. And the second test result I would like to highlight is the latency. So current latency we got is minimum is 6 milliseconds, including the, how to say, PLC payload package. So we deployed several features either in the radio and also for the network. For example, disable the TDX and also increase inactive timer. All these features can increase the RTT latency for our customers' PLC. And this is mainly for open safety user case. And also we have some further improvement plan working together with our vendor. For example, based on release 16 and 17, 5G LAN. And this one will be help integrate Ethernet protocol, industrial Ethernet protocol into 5G. And also E2E, this is, I want to highlight, this is not normal ultra low latency. This is E2E latency from the UV to the core network and then connected to customers' IT infrastructure. So all this improvement plan, we have some discussion with our vendor. I'm very happy to share and all these results together with you in the following sessions. But yeah, for the time,
So I think we have to stop because we are already running out of time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's there is a lot of things to say for these great projects, and it was a rich presentation. And quickly, I will move to our next presenter. So if you can switch off your camera and unmute Loretta, and move into the presentation from 5G AMC Square and 5G Logistics with Jeff Land, the head of sales and business development from Autocore. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Abdelatif, and good morning all. Appreciate your time. Just let me share my slides. I'll see if I can get us back on the timing track, if at all possible. Can you see my slides? Okay, good.
Yes, that's great.
Great. So yeah, I'm Jeff Land, head of sales and business development at Autocore. One quick slide about us. We're a privately held UK company, been in existence since 2014. Distributed team, but a head office in Cambridge, and still majority owned by its two founders. Basically what we do is development of mobile core software. So we have a 4G EPC and a 5G core, and that's all we do. We're very focused and we execute an excellent dual products there. Our activities in the 5G Create context are threefold. We're the 5G core supplier in the Smart Junctions project, but I'll say nothing more on that one because you'll hear all about it in the next presentation. We're also a 5G core supplier and a consortium partner on the 5G logistics project. And we go one step further to be a full consortium board member and actually responsible for the technical solution on the 5G AMC squared construction project. And it's in the context of this last one that I'm going to be presenting some of the project's highlights, some of the challenges and outcomes. So at a very high level, quick snapshot at the 5G logistics project, which is a Bristol-based 5G Create Smart City project implemented in Bristol and the Gravity Smart Campus, intended originally to support drone operations around the port of Bristol, to utilize 5G location features to track the logistics between the port and Gravity, also to support traffic management systems at two very busy Bristol junctions. And the deliverables were or are 5G standalone core and a RAN network supporting the upper part of N77, utilizing a radio solution from Airspan and Release 16 location and positioning core capability from our good selves. 5G AMC squared project is actually two small networks. There's a campus site in Kilsyth, which is near Glasgow in Scotland, and a construction project site on the Shetland Islands. The idea of the project is to evaluate the impact of 5G on a range of already used digital construction systems. And I'll go into a little bit of detail of what that is in the following slides. Again, this is all 5G standalone, and again, utilizing the UK shared spectrum in the upper N77 band. The RAN partner here is Acceleran, utilizing release 15 mobile broadband as the underlying solution, and again relying on release 16 core capabilities and positioning. Just expanding a little bit more on the project team here. I mentioned Acceleran, but there's SaaS as well as the hardware vendors and service providers. And Impleo is a services integration and execution, so a deployment, installation and commissioning company that have been working together on the project. This is a really, really busy slide, and I make no apology for it because I wanted to use this to actually pull out one or two of the very positive outcomes from an overall project perspective. So what you see here is the overall network deployment from the core here on the left-hand side. And what you're looking at here is actually a truly multi-vendor O-RAN RAN deployment solution. So what we have is Acceleran as the overall RAN system integrator, but also a vendor of the CU and a non-real-time RIC. Then in the DU, this is delivered by, I think they're a Swedish company, FNet, and a software solution providing the 7.2 split from Fluido. So the hi-fi running on FNet's DU, the lo-fi running on the radio units that are coming from Benatar, which is an Irish company out of Dublin. Then on the far right here, there's a series of use cases that are quite specific to the construction segment. From a robotic dog there supplied by Trimble, which is armed with surveying capabilities. And I've got a couple of photos to follow this that show the evolution of the site, and you hopefully will see why some of these services are quite important. The HAALT solution from Plinks, that's high accuracy asset location and tracking. That's very important in a construction context as well. Then this one source of truth is very high quality video to keep a careful eye on everything that's happening on the site. Then this HoloLane's device is like an AI integration into architectural information so that people on the ground are able to wear the glasses and visualize the architecture that's being built actually onto the site. So some really innovative use cases being tested here. So this is the site as it looked at the start of the project, and I think it's quite typical of a construction site particularly of this nature, where it's very rural, it's completely off grid. There's absolutely zero telecom infrastructure there, and in fact, there's even very little, if anything, in the way of mobile coverage whatsoever. As the site developed, so this is about 6 months later in the summer, what you can see is a very busy construction site. The robotic dog, for example, with its surveying capabilities, is intended to be employed looking at things like this banking that's been built up to check for water seepage and for slippage of the bank. I won't go into too much detail, but the alternative of a robotic dog doing this, and bear in mind that it's a 3-day round trip to get to Shetland of a very qualified surveyor. It saves time on the one hand and resource of a very highly qualified individual, but it also means that he's not wandering around a very busy construction site. So in all of these use cases, there's a very strong health and safety aspect that's being taken into account. And this is a last picture of the site just before Christmas. The radios, the 5G radios, are in 3 locations. I think here, somewhere around here, and in one of these other corners. So the development targets overall for both of these main projects that we're involved in is 5G core in SA mode. For Attocore, it was development from release 15 to release 16 with a focus on containerizing the functions, network slicing, and implementing 5G location features. On the RAN side, it's an O-RAN aligned multi-vendor radio access layer that we were looking for, capable of utilizing UK shared spectrum, so N77 upper, which is 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz, and then support for location-based features. On the devices side, again, support for N77 upper, SA mode, and location features. So just some of the developments and the challenges that we came across. I think it's fair to say on the core side, as it's software only, it was relatively speaking an easy task. Attocore benefited greatly from being involved in these projects. It focused our development activities, and of course we got funded to do some of this stuff as well. So overall for Attocore, it's been a very positive experience. Some of the challenges were more apparent on the rest of the network side. So for the G-Node B vendors, general availability of product in supporting the right band, so 3.8 to 4.2. Normally speaking, a band change in a radio is a relatively straightforward thing for the vendor to do. But actually, this part of the band is so new, so unused, that the vendors experience very long lead times and fundamental difficulties getting hold of supply of the right power amplifiers and filters, etc. And in fact, some of the vendors that we spoke to were actually only able to transmit in the lower part of that band. To date, there's zero support for location features, and actually little indication of when this might be realized in the RAN on the G-Node Bs. From an O-RAN perspective, it's quite immature still. Even though I highlighted the O-RAN as being available, it was very slow. You need a strong system integration partner, and it took multiple iterations of software deliveries. And in fact, in the 5G logistics project, the RAN vendor has come across serious delays, and we're actually looking at changing the solution for an integrated G-Node B. I'll skip there. Last slide on the devices side. Whilst most 5G-enabled devices work in the N78 band, only some will work in N77, and actually very few will work in N77 and SA mode. That's further hamstrung by the fact that Qualcomm did not support this, which meant that most smartphones were unusable, apart from a couple of exceptions. Quectel modems work very well, and they've been used extensively in our networks as the modem in a flexible CPE solution. If you look at the UK 5G organization website, you'll see a reasonable amount of information on that. And actually, there are quite a lot of 5G devices available now. The real downside for us is that none of the current devices that we've come across support 5G location and are not expected to until at least release 17. So that's all I had for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, for the rich presentation. And because we are running out of time, I will go directly to Maria Lama for the 5G Smart Junction project. Maria is the founder of Waiver Labs. If you can switch on your camera and unmute your microphone, Maria, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Good, thank you. Let me see if I can just... Great, well, thank you everyone. I am just virtually standing in the middle between your coffee break. So I'm just gonna try and go straight to the point. So I'm here to talk to you about the Smart Junctions project. So it's one of the 5G Create projects. And as Jeff mentioned, we are using AutoCore and a very similar system as the one that he just presented in terms of RAN. So we have AutoCore, Acceleran, and kind of like the same variety of vendors in the O-RAN. But in terms of project partners, this project is led by Vivacity Labs, and they basically have the Smart Junctions product, which essentially what it does, it uses reinforcement learning to control the traffic light system by using different policies. So you can enforce active travel or, you know, favor certain types of traffic during the day. And the ultimate customer of this, it's Transport for Greater Manchester, who of course wants to use digital tools to better manage the traffic in the city and look, for example, to improve productivity. And what we bring in Weaver Labs, we create a software layer that sits on top of the telecoms infrastructure and facilitate a network as a service in order to kind of like look at reducing the constraints and the upskilling that organizations such as Transport for Greater Manchester need when deploying a private network. And the challenges, as you all know, they are a lot. So we have kind of looked at different challenges from the perspective of network design, implementation, and so on and so forth. But today, what I would like to talk to you about, it's a little bit about the cybersecurity approach that we have in this project. So very quickly, I want to just give you a quick snapshot of the network itself. It covers a 1.5 kilometer in the area of Salford, very much dense urban area. And we use only street assets for the network. That means that the cloud part of the network, so all the network functions are running in the street cabinets, where the controller cabinets for the Smart Junctions product go also installed in there. That means that we have to look at temperature constraints, space constraints, power constraints, because we don't want to route all the traffic to a data center. The reason why we did this network design is because we want to use as much as we can street furniture. And we want the network to scale because we add more nodes into the network. So very much edge type of deployment. So we have one cabinet that is running the full core, and then all the other cabinets are just running a very light core, where we just have this UPF that kind of like sends the traffic all the way to the cloud. The Smart Junctions project it's called kind of like quote unquote low latency, but essentially it's not low latency, but what you need is a stable latency, and what it needs is the network to be reliable and available all the time. So that's the whole reason we are using a private network. However, there is a lot of excess of capacity that we have in this network because the traffic signal control, it's not very heavy in terms of traffic. So this network can be used for a variety of other use cases. So Transport for Greater Manchester, what it does, it invests in a 5G network, leveraging the capital costs for improving productivity, and then uses this network for multiple other smart city use cases using the network as a service platform that Weaver Labs builds. And within this network as a service platform, we not only include the access networks, but we can also offer as a service all these passive assets, so-called passive assets that exist in this kind of like 1.5 kilometer stretch. So that includes, you know, the traffic signals where we mount the small cells, the controller cabinets, which we have surveyed, the ducting and the available fiber that we have in the area. So the idea is that we build a network that can be shared across different sectors in a smart city, and leveraging the investment from one use case, and then we can share it across multiple other use cases in the city. And the idea is that in the future, we would use blockchain in order to transact with these assets and being able to access them in a very easy way. And the reason to using blockchain, it has very different elements in our product. The first, of course, it enables scalability because of the trustless operations and the fact that anyone can actually contribute resources on infrastructure. And then we add all of those in the service layer and open them up for any use case and application. However, I believe that the most important element here is the zero trust model that we can leverage using the blockchain PKI and access via authorization. So if we see a smart city infrastructure as kind of like a mix and match of resources that are brought in by different providers, I don't need to be trusting whoever it's in this environment, and I can just trust the blockchain network itself that whatever they are providing into this network has been verified, leveraging consensus, for example. And using the blockchain capabilities, we can make sure that every node in this network or every contributor in this network has, of course, been authenticated, authorized, and belongs to this overlay network in a secure way. So that's kind of like a brief introduction of who we are and what we do in the context of the project. But then when we started working on the Smart Junctions project, the first thing that we understood was that cybersecurity was going to take an important aspect. The first and foremost, it's because of when we started the project, we had the telecom security bill that was recently announced, and we were kind of moving into a new environment with a much more diverse supply chain. As I said, we have 4 vendors in our network, and it's very much heavily software based, so API driven. So there are a lot of open threats that we can have and risks in such a rich and diverse ecosystem. And one thing that we kind of realized early on into the project was that we need to ensure that there was a single and common way of looking at cybersecurity across supply chain. But it was very, very difficult to do that. If any of you have been ever looking at the challenge of building a cybersecurity posture, not only for your organization, but also as a product that integrates multiple telecoms infrastructure, you would understand that the industry, it's kind of like buried in policies and protocols, and it is very, very difficult to know where to start. The first thing is that I think Pablo also mentioned this, securing something, it's way more than just securing your product or the cybersecurity or using TLS protocols. Security, it spans all the way around the organization, and it looks at physical security of the passive assets and the cybersecurity of the active assets. And if we want to look at security as something that it goes end to end and it spans across one organization and it intersects across the supply chain, then we should look at it from an integrated approach. But then when we try and look into all of these standards that exist, it is very, very difficult to understand which ones we should be adopting. So for example, in this supply chain, Vivacity does not have to look at the same standards that Weaver Labs has to look or Transport for Greater Manchester has to look, right? So we need a way to map the business orientation and operations to the security standards that need to be adopted, and a very easy way to look at the risk that we are posed as organizations. And if we don't have that, the problem is that no one is looking at cybersecurity. And we end up with solutions that entail security by obscurity. And that was not a problem when we had just one vendor for the entire network. But with multiple vendors, this is going to be a massive problem. And we do not ensure adoption of security. And that is going to be a massive problem for all of us here, because we now have the telecom security requirements, we have the security bill coming, and we do have to adopt better practices. So what we did was we developed as a means to kind of like work ourselves through these standards. We developed the cybersecurity risk assessment tool so that we could actually create a cybersecurity posture for ourselves and a strategy for the entire project. So what we did, we integrated the policies that are kind of more relevant for our project, which are the NIST cybersecurity frameworks, the telecom security requirements from NCSC, and those related to secure software development and zero trust architecture brought by NCSC. And what we did was we abstracted all of these policies in a very easy way that you can just answer a lot of questions and understand what sort of policies you should be adopting in order to tackle, cybersecurity, physical security, cloud security, and so on and so forth. So very, very simply, the way that this kind of like looks like is we have some sort of security controls, which are the things that us as an organization, based on our business operations, we should be looking at. And that is mapped in with certain policies. And we do that for every standard. So every day that we import one new standard, the security controls remain the same. So you would be cross-referencing to 5 different standards, 10 different standards. It doesn't matter because the control is the way that we abstract that. And the organization goes through all of these controls, and then the output of this, it is in a risk analysis, the exposure that you can have, and an action plan to mitigate all of that. The other thing that we do is we score. We, based on the credit rating scoring systems, we've created a score for each organization. Because of where we sit in the supply chain and we aggregate telecoms infrastructure, we think that it is very important that we are open and transparent about how each organization is taking on the responsibility of cybersecurity in smart cities and in general in cross-vendor networks. So if I own an infrastructure and I open that as a service to be used for other use cases, it is important that I explain how secure I am without opening up to my vulnerabilities. So a score is kind of a good way of doing that and finding a compromise. So what we can do is we implement more and more of those security controls in the action plan, we work towards improving our score towards each of the standards that we have, that we are actually kind of implementing. So how do we actually use this in our organization? So we collaborate with other test beds to help them build a cybersecurity strategies. And also we include that in our new projects by helping others build security declarations using that, using the tool, and also apply best practices for software development life cycles. And then in our product, we used it to basically create a strategy for zero trust implementation in our software product for authentication and management of the 5G network from the application layer perspective. Also, we have used the NIST policies and the NCSC policies to implement role-based access control in our platform, and also the kind of like an underlying capability of zero trust is monitoring and health of the network and alarms to make sure that we are always keeping track of the network. And very, very simply, for those who are not familiar with zero trust, the way that we do is we break down this perimeter model. And before we used to say, okay, so I trust this environment because this is my environment. And I trust that it's secure because I trust the vendor that has done their job very, very well. Well, we cannot do that in an O-RAN environment and with 4 vendors in the network. So what we do is we shrink the perimeter model all the way down to a single node of the network. So what we do is we authenticate every single element of the network. We authorize people, you know, to join this network and nodes to join this network, and have this monitoring layer that actually allows us to, you know, always be in control of our assets. And I think that is it from my side. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit more about cybersecurity in our project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria, for this very rich presentation. And with that, we are coming to the end of our first part of webinar. But I would like first to thank all our speakers for the good presentation that they have already given. Welcome back to the second part of this webinar. So in this session, we will have panel discussion about the lessons and the impact from current industrial 5G deployments, and also a vision about the future standard and implementation roadmap for identified gaps. So let me welcome the chair of this panel, Sylvia Lu, who is the head of technology strategy and also the chair of Working Group 4 on Liaison and Marketing at 5G ACIA. So Sylvia, please, if you can share your, switch on your camera and also unmute your microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abradactive. So hello and welcome to this panel session organized by Digital Catapult. Next, we are going to hear the latest insights from the experts deeply involved in trialing and deploying 5G, both in the UK and internationally. We are going to reflect on the learnings and how the other international organizations they represent have been tackling similar challenges of 5G integration with Industry 4.0. And most importantly, how can we amplify the impact of the current industry 5G developments to accelerate global adoption of 5G in the manufacturing and logistics sectors. Without further ado, let me introduce our 4 distinguished panelists, as you can see on this slide. If I can invite all the panelists to join me on this virtual stage and switch on your camera, please. So we have Hui, chair of the steering board at the Network Europe. And we got David, founders of SafeNetics, and also board member of Public Safety Communication Europe and 6GIA. We've also got Joanne, vice president, digital ecosystems at TN Forum. And last but not least, Jeff, which is the customer success lead, dedicated networks at Ericsson and GSA. Now, I want to first start with following up on the previous discussion on Testbeds and Trials project and the impact on 5G ecosystem. It is fantastic to see how those exploration activities in the UK have brought together various stakeholders in different value chain and continue to force collaboration and adoption. We've also heard from Andreas Müller how 5G ACIA brought together 5G testbeds globally, carried out real-world evaluations through peer reviews at its Testbed and Trials endorsement program, not only showcase capability from the members in terms of device, edge compute integration with existing systems or private network solutions, facilitated learnings through the global partner network. Joanne, now, could we start with you first? So you are deeply involved in 5G EM, which is embedded manufacturing project we heard earlier, and you also represent TN Forum in the project. You're also driving TN Forum's strategy and roadmap and help member companies to develop their diversification strategy. Do you find the learnings from 5G EM transferable to the other activities in the TM Forum or the other standardization organizations like SC or ITUT?
Absolutely. So thank you, Sylvia, and thank you to the team for today's session. It's very, very interesting. So yes, the work that I do at TM Forum is working with the communication service providers community and their suppliers on development of the standards that take them beyond connectivity. So it builds upon all of the IT type standards that we use inside the communications operator. Our primary portfolio is the open digital architecture and open APIs to enable modular scalability and interoperability. And as the co-founder of the Open API initiative at TM Forum, even when we were starting that initiative almost 10 years ago now, we always had in our mind's eye the role of ecosystems and the opportunity to work with different industry verticals. So at every instance, we've always been normalizing and making the systems more generic, or finding the right balance between generic and specificity. So being generic enough so that they can be used by different verticals. So focusing on the business operations piece and then providing the extensibility for use in a given instance, even in an instance like industrial manufacturing or smart cities. They've been extensively proven in the smart city space. And now with this project, we also were able to prove elements of those standards in the industrial manufacturing. And another key area that we're currently focused on is connectivity as a service. And the specificity that we were able to get from this project, like we heard Pablo talk earlier about being able to manage the balance between performance and latency. We're creating a whole standard for that for the telecommunications industry to allow for the automated management of this level of specificity. So the project has been tremendously useful to go beyond the conceptual and into the nitty-gritty practical application. And then we also share this back to our community. So the test bed on one hand is the physical environment, and then we also showcased it as part of the TM Forum event to grow the awareness to the telecommunications industry.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Keep it generic. And I'd like to come back to you later on the connectivity as service. I think it's quite interesting to hear what you're doing there as well. Now, next, Jeff, if I can come to you next. So you are with Ericsson and GSA and have lots of experience of enabling dedicated networks. We know that the project in the UK have been vocal about the availability of 5G devices and chipset, in particular at the beginning of 5G deployment. I'm talking about 2020, 2021. And we know that GSA maintain a database of 5G devices and publish them regularly. Well, what is your view? Do you see that device availability still as a major challenge for adoption? And we've seen really 6Gs coming out, etc. So what are your perspective for the ecosystem forward?
Yeah, no, exactly. It has been an issue. But I think now we're a little bit past that point and we're moving on. So, right now there are, I mean, of course, in the LTE ecosystem, there's plenty available and at the right price point. But in 5G and 5GSA, I mean, chipsets are now there. Modules are now available from a number of suppliers. And I think Jeff, in the Atto Core discussion earlier, he described it very well, that there are a diverse set of results from these products. But I'd say chipsets are really solidly in place. Modules now from multiple vendors are available. Next in the hierarchy is gateways. And there are gateways available too. Again, we see quite diverse performance from these. So you need to really, I would say, check carefully on the performance you're going to get from these products at this stage. But, it's all about where are we in the adoption curve. And we're certainly past that entry point when it's an issue. So now we just simply need to let a little time pass and see this pick up at scale. But while we're at this early stage, I think the price point for the devices can be an issue because the chipsets are built for complete multifunction. They're high performance chipsets, and so whatever module or gateway or device you build on top of that, it has that high functionality in there, and it must price for it. So that may be an issue that the industry need to deal with.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate a bit more discussion later on regarding the gaps still there. So hold on that. Next, David, if I can come to you. So you wear several hats and have extensive experience in the cybersecurity and resilience communication area. In the 5G TT program, we've seen different approaches and activities around security. Some examples be given from 5G EM, security by design, for example, 5G smart junction, zero trust architecture, for example. So, what's your perspective in terms of how can we leverage those experience and scale them essentially globally?
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia. Quite a challenge to explore this. It's certainly interesting to explore how the different stakeholders in our community look at security. All of those approaches presented earlier are effective and certainly in different ways. There's no single answer to this question, this problem, but there's lots of lessons to learn from these activities, and that's for sure. I'm pretty sure you'll agree the zero trust model is looking pretty attractive, but I think it's something that we need to explore a lot more going forward. I'm going to take quite a helicopter view, and if you won't mind, I'll explain some of the work we're doing too. So in Safenetics, a small company in the UK, we're involved in a number of 5G projects. We're involved in the 5G Factory of the Future project, and of course the Rural Testbeds project, Mobile Access North Yorkshire. Both have different security dimensions. One has a dimension in terms of the operational technology in the factory with that perspective, and in the many projects, the human dimensions there. So that, there are humans at the end of the applications used, and that's something I think is not reflected here, because we're talking in this industrial community about private networks, really, and there's not really humans at the end of them. There's human decision makers, that's for sure, but where are they in that security assessment? Because humans are the weakest link, that's for sure. So in kind of a way, in short, we're doomed. There's people involved. It's quite a worry, but a little bit more on what we do. So I think we do need that better concerted effort from those activities, certainly security. Everybody's working in silos for their own specific needs, but there's a lot of commonality across there. Like I say, we're involved in the Factory of the Future program, and what we do is we coordinate a dialogue of risk assessment across the use cases and test beds. That's actually involving the people involved in the project to understand the security needs and, of course, the risks in there. We do the same in the many projects as well, where it expands out to in one use case, our own use case, mission critical mobile networks, for use by the public safety responders, the mountain rescue team. So their involvement there and their decisions they make based on information transferred are pretty crucial. And this decision making is what's key. In the factory, there are decision makers, but moreover, in true industrial tradition, we're starting to consider to replace humans with automated decision making, artificial intelligence. So we have more challenges in there, of course. So security by design, zero trust, security risk analysis, it's all there, it's all useful, but we need to bring it together. I think the zero trust model is going far. I think it needs a lot more concerted interaction with the rest of the community, that's for sure. But finally, I would say trustworthiness is key. We talk about security, trustworthiness is the key word going forward, I would say. Not only about traditional IT, but do we trust the information? Do we trust the systems over which it's transferred? Do the comm systems trust each other? Do businesses in the supply chain trust each other? Trust is a pretty delicate thing. considering the global dimension, I'll come back to that later. It's okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic insight. And as you mentioned already, the 3 toolboxes, you know, security by design, zero trust architecture, for example, already providing a very, you know, good blueprint, if you like, for anyone starting from scratch. So absolutely spot on. Now, of course, security and robust critical networks go hand in hand. If I can come to you, Jeff, and you, Rui, as well, given your background both in the network side, can you comment on the importance of robust critical networks? So perhaps, Jeff, if you come first, and then we have Huey.
Sure. So David, yes, as well commented, the security issue is key, and it absolutely is trust. Trust is the better word, in fact, right? And I think in our industrial networks and our OT systems, we've got to embrace the concern that those OT managers have, that they've been running networks on cables, which are inherently secure, or at least, you know, visibly secure, let's say like that. And then when they move into a wireless mode, and they kind of need to move into a wireless mode to enable the agility in the factory of the future, to enable factories to move around and handle single, more tailored type of production. So then they need to become comfortable and trust into the wireless environment. And perhaps starting with a Wi-Fi install base, you know, might not meet all of the needs they expect from the cable. So 5G has been introduced very much to address this trust as a wireless network, which sort of stands up to the trust and requirements they have. But they have more requirements than security, of course. And as you said there, Sylvia, so it's very low latency, and that is designed and built into the 5G architecture. So I think that they will achieve, but as Maria mentioned in her presentation, it's more than low latency. It's predictable latency, bounded latency, and that's not automatically in the 3GPP standards. It has been brought in release 15 onwards. So to answer your question directly, where does this ultra reliable low latency kick in? Well, it's kicking in now, but those R15 features need to be built into all products across the whole ecosystem, from the chipsets up to all the vendor products and across all the vendor products. It really is an end-to-end thing. It's not sufficient to put this into one part of the communications chain. So we're seeing those products coming out now, right now. But it's not a black or white thing. So they'll come in many stages and many features to be implemented. And I think this is a several years journey, in fact, but starting right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Hui?
Okay, so good morning. Thank you, Sylvia. I always, when I'm in this kind of discussion panels, which try to bring the 5G into play into different areas, I often think to myself of how misplaced we tend to put discussion. And the word security is one of those more tricky to address. Indeed, David was very concerned with what I would call the attack view of security, but what as Jeff has said, what companies want an industrial environment is predictability. They want something that works without they thinking about it. And yeah, they do like cable, but cable is also a problem. You know, switches crash, routers crash, all that impacts the reliability of the factories. Many places are now becoming, you know, fully robotized. And that is supposedly to be 24/7. Communication has to be a non-issue. And even cable communication is an issue. There are concerns in terms of reliability, without talking about all the perimeter security things that appear. Now, I don't see the transition for 5G as an issue in terms of security. In fact, what I see is an issue in terms of reliability, because the flexibility that factories can get out of 5G, on the other hand, does not allow them at the same time to have the predictability in terms of the communication flows. And sometimes I wonder if we are not spending, a lot of time looking at the wrong problems of the reliability of the factories. And a very simple point that I give is that we have a workforce that understands industrial communications. We have a workforce that has transitioned to Wi-Fi communications. And now we are expecting that workforce to transition without a problem to 5G. This is not going to happen. And this is a factor that we need to factor. Okay, this is a factor that we need to factor in when we are discussing this transition and how to actually make 5G the adequate solution for the future factories of the future. And this is an issue of reliability, and security is an issue, but there are so many dimensions that we keep on forgetting and where we should also be working with.
Yeah, that's a very good point. In particular, that key factor when we are talking about in the context of private network, and that's where the 5G indeed bring that dimension, which is not, differentiate itself with previous generations.
Sylvia, could I just throw in a comment? Would you mind?
Yeah, please.
So Pablo described the same point from Vodafone in his discussion earlier, that these 5G networks are not plug and play, and perhaps the IT managers in these production environments are kind of expecting that or require that, and they are just different things, and we get different performance, we get a different network, but they're not plug and play, and so there are some issues to deal with there. But this is all going to be a scaling thing, right? The mobile phone business, the smartphone business, is scaled at billions of users because 3GPP set in place its standards. The industrial world is more fragmented and more distributed. So how do we get to that scaling factor? And it's really going to, because what we're at now, we're at the stage where a lot of trials in factories and so on are that. They are trials and they're hand built and hand designed. But we need to go absolutely to an industrialization phase where products come in and can be deployed and can be managed. They can be upgraded, they can be operated, integrated, onboarded, lifecycle managed. These things just have to become industrialized. And I think that's the turning point when we hit scale. And then we'll see wide take up across different industries.
Yeah, that's a theme of the discussion indeed, and scaling that's really important. Now come back to TM Forum and 5GM, Joanne, that you mentioned earlier about connectivity as a service, and we know that in particular the private 5G network for manufacturing logistics has been considered as an important growth market for telecom operators. But to grow their business, is it purely through cellular connectivity or a combination with other technologies? So we've heard in the previous presentations, AI has been mentioned various times, XR, for example, and reflecting from experience, what solutions can accelerate the adoption and maximize value, really?
Thanks, Sylvia. So I think building on what Jeff was saying and the previous conversation, the opportunities extend from the provision of the technology of connectivity of 5G mobile private networks, but also in the managed service of managing them, because as this technology is being deployed, it's increasingly complex, and you cannot necessarily expect the in this instance, in our instance, it was a factory, but it could be a hospital, it could be an airport, to have the expertise of telecommunications, because that's not their business. So I do see an extended role for the communications operators and suppliers, such as Ericsson and others, to go beyond the boundary of where we used to go traditionally in our selling of services. So there's either managed services initially, but in time, automating a lot of what we were talking about. You know, we talk about zero trust earlier, but there's also the zero touch, the need to be able to product on board in an automated way, to be able to onboard devices and machines, to be able to capture the intent requirements of the machines, but are from humans, and to be able to automatically deliver the right connectivity at the right time, every time. And these are a whole set of components, if you will, standardized components that we are currently focused on at TM Forum, building out from, you know, many of the things we've been doing for many years on zero touch operations. So these are types of things. So firstly, extending beyond the boundary of where we used to go to market into managed services. Then there's other areas such as security of networks, IoT, edge compute and cloud, and the combination of these things, the end-to-end provider or curator of the end-to-end services to manage you know, all of the connectivity and interoperability of these solutions are the types of areas where CSPs are considering their growth trajectory in the future. The top of the scale, based on a recent survey that we ran, was actually in the security and IoT space, were the most preferred areas by communications operators globally for their growth trajectories. So it's really a combination of a new business strategy, not just in the products that they offer, but the operations to support that. There'll also be a requirement for new types of skills, particularly if you go into the managed service area. That requires a different set of skills that would need to be available as well. So loads of opportunity, that's the good news.
Yeah, that's fantastic insight. It's not just about technology, they are enablers, right? But it's about business models and skills.
Yeah, and coming from a trusted brand of in-depth knowledge and experience of managing large-scale, very complex connectivity environments.
Yeah, quite holistic approach. Excellent. So, so next, if I come to you next, you have been involved in all European funded framework program, which is quite impressive. And you was involved in the development of the Network Europe initiative and also the launch of the 5G IA PPP program, which then lead to lots of test beds and trials in Europe. So reflecting from these experience in the Europe, what are the gaps still there that need to be solved for 5G and beyond? Can you share some lessons learned from the previous program? And finally, there's lots of questions to you, but finally, what is a strategic vision, if you can share, in Europe moving forward in research and innovation space?
Okay, exactly, lots of questions. Let me see if I can recall all of them. Now, first, thank you for reminding me of my age. I'm not that reminded that in public, but thank you. Yes, I've been involved in the whole framework programs, and many things changed. I will just reflect on the last things about 5G and something that clearly happened in the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years. I would say that the innovation and research that we're doing before was very much a geek thing. So it was us techies talking for us techies about what the techie could do in the future. In the last, well, in Horizon 2020 and now in Horizon Europe even more, that stopped being enough. And we've been confronted to why are you doing that particular feature? Why are you doing research in this aspect? Why are you creating time-sensitive networks? Why are you developing URLC concepts? So we techies had to pass through a stage of starting to reflect of what will be the value of specific technologies, because the dreams that we could do a lot of things would still, there are still many, but we definitely would not be able to, with timing constraints, pressure constraints, to realize all of them. So we needed to learn, or we had to learn how to choose, and choose in such a way that society around us would benefit of that. I would say that's our major change in the last years. And then as techies, we don't learn very well. So we actually needed to learn to do that. But, we techies know what's best for you, Yeah? We know what's best for you. You should really do what we tell you. And I would say that the change between what we learned on 5GPP and what we are now trying to, let's say, to at least correct or improve, the point is that we are not enough. I mean, the example I gave a couple of moments ago regarding the workforce we have, I mean, I can produce the best technology in the world, but if the workforce is not able to touch it, or if the workforce has a bad reaction of it, and sometimes are for very simple reasons, which we don't even consider at that time, then that technology is doomed to failure. I usually laugh because I worked with Bluetooth 1.0, and took me, many years until I trusted Bluetooth afterwards, because the kind of technology that I touched at that moment, that I was working with and I tried to develop, was way too immature for what people were announcing and what people were expecting. And the result was, my personal reaction was, I rejected that technology. So everybody kept on working on Bluetooth. Bluetooth improved, became a reliable technology. But personally, I only took Bluetooth, and I was one of the first. Then as one of the latest, when people actually proved me around me, everybody was proving around me that the technology was, really reliable. And that is the kind of things that we have not learned to correct yet. And we still are not able to actually reach, for instance, to the factory people, and really to understand what they are, what could make a difference to them. We are still too much, I won't call our ivory towers, because now we already built stairs to those towers, but we are still not able to actually answer their requirements, because often we look at their requirements and say, hey, this is not a technology issue, but in fact it is. It's often, as Joanne was saying, on OEM and those kinds of and managed services that we don't really pay attention to. They are the poor cousins of the innovation. And I often wonder why, because there is a huge amount of value and money to be done on that. Now, finally, strategy. All of this that I'm mentioning is basically shows that there is a need for, between what I would say the dreamers, and then going through the standardization, and then going into the deployment, to actually make that path smoother. We have been discussing that and doing that between Networld Europe, 6GIA, ETSI, in order how we are able to establish the links such that people take the opportunities as much as possible. And the collaborations with groups like 5GA CIA that we also try to do. All those things are ways of trying to build these bridges and make sure that we are talking the proper languages. Saying this, I still do not think that we are really talking the proper languages often. And we have some, I would say, high-tech aspects where we are now able to relate easily, but we don't have a value interface where we are still able to relate easily. We hope that now with this development for the future with 6G technologies and so on, that we bring some of these lessons from the start and are able to actually push innovation and strategic directions aligned as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a fantastic coverage of various insights in terms of gaps and the vision for the future. Picking up on that value, and in particular, the value for society and consumer, if you like, and the whole economic, beyond economic impact. David, if I come to you, and that has been one of the priority, if you like, when Park Company and Alliance has been sharing the visions for 6G, which is a value for societal value, right? Now with your 6G IA's board hats, can you share some vision for the future and also the activities happening around that space in 6G IA?
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia. And thanks, Rui, for setting me up on the values question, because we've had that conversation quite recently. And I've been a board member in 6GIA since March last year and had the privilege of being involved in those discussions on how the strategic research agenda has transferred into this work program, the Smart Networks and Services, which is, I believe, very due to be launched. The calls are due to be launched in the next few weeks. A big part of that work program, it goes differently from the 5G PPP in Horizon 2020, where a lot of it was all focused around KPIs, key performance indicators, so technical measures. And KPIs are still in there from the technical language viewpoint, but also now KVIs, key value indicators, and understanding what is the key value, as Rui said, of that technical innovation, what is the key value to society. And it is really not an easy thing to quantify. I'm a big advocate for it because I got very frustrated over the Horizon 2020 times, because in the 5G PPP world, my background being in public safety communication, public safety was not involved there. And so we did have to have a few conversations with the Commission about that. But the thing with public safety is that there's no easy economic exchange. The governments pay for that communication technology, the responders save lives, society gains. There's not really a value, an economic value in return. It's a life-saving value. And so understanding those societal impacts of the benefit of this, in terms of improving the efficiency in the industry perspective, what is the key value to society? Well, yes, there's a lot of economics there, but is it about bringing, products to service sooner, quicker? Does that improve society? How do we look at that? This is wide open. It's brand new way of thinking. It's not a brand new way of thinking, really. It's a brand new way of thinking for our community. I've got a technology background, so it's a difficult one to get your head around. I particularly learned that not just from public safety, but in data protection over the years. Understanding the human interaction. I'm coming back to my human involvement in the security context and the trustworthy context. So when it comes to the key values in the work program of the Smart Networks and Services, it's there. It's not the biggest part of it. The technology view, I think most of the money is going to go to the technological innovation, but putting that drive on it to actually figure out the key values. We often think about the economic drivers, but it's not necessarily just that. It's about key values to society. And so, yeah, this is something hopefully in the work program's published now for Smart Networks and Services. There's 240 million euro being put on the table in this call, and should be released in the next few weeks. And of course, there's other programs in Europe that are surrounding that as well. So yeah, I'll hand over now.
Yeah, that's a fantastic insight. If I can call it value creation by design, that's my mindset shift, quite important. And there's also a link to the Smart Networks and Service Competition Core launch today, which is shared in the QA box if anyone's interested. Just a shout out to that. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and if anyone in the audience want to pose a question, please feel free to do so in the QA box. And what I'd like to do is come around the table and to really look at the vision for the future. What's the way forward? What's the way forward moving next? What is in particular, briefly, if you can take a couple of sentences, what's your vision for the future?
Who would you like to go first?
Can I ask you then, Joanne?
Okay, no problem. So I think the vision for the future needs to be kind of taken in the context of what's going on in right across all industries. The fact that we're coming hopefully off a major wave of the pandemic, which in and of itself has accelerated digital transformation, by an estimated 7 years across pretty much all verticals. But building on what David was saying, there's a technology aspect to this, but there's the value aspect, but it's largely driven by the business model. And I do see that in many cases that the lack of sustainable business models is actually what's holding back an awful lot of the innovation. So I think there's a combination or a need for rebalancing around the business and the technical aspects of this, getting more justification for the investment, finding the right business models to justify the return on investment over the short and medium term. Because right now, it does look like a lot of the returns are extended out possibly too many years to justify investment in many cases. So we need to solve that. We need to solve the rebalancing towards business and value to justify the investment to enable the level of automation that is most certainly possible around partnering and ecosystems and settlement. And, there's just so much that can happen, and there's so much that is happening on the technology side. So it does need a bit of re-leveling. And if assuming that can happen, which is a massive if, I think the growth as we come out of the hopefully out, but or learn to live with the pandemic will grow exponentially in the years ahead. But I do think we have a tough year ahead, to be honest, in the next year or two while we solve these foundations.
Fantastic insight. So Jeff?
Yeah, well, I'd like to see the future in the eyes of the workers, because there's most certainly enormous gains to be had when we have sensors out there that can really at scale collect enormous amounts of data. The insights and the AI that can come from that should be of value to everyone and everything. And there's obviously an automation agenda where we can see higher levels of autonomous vehicles or wireless robotic equipment or remote controlled equipment. This will take away a lot of tedious tasks and should improve quality along the way. But really, behind all of this, there are still workers, and many workers today work in harsh environments, or perhaps even lonely environments. Where when they do their job, they're alone doing their job. They may have others around them, but they basically are working with their own task. And we hope and see that with 5G and a more wireless and more powerful capability in that wireless network, those workers can become much more highly empowered with augmented reality, with links through to digital twins that are at their fingertips, or simple things like manuals at their fingertips, and then being able to share back to remote centers of expertise and be part of an interactive, real-time working community of people. So I think there's a wonderful future ahead for workers if we can put all this together.
Yeah, great point. Hui?
Okay, first, I will say that inside Network Europe, one of the things that we do is something called the Strategic Research, Innovation and Agenda, which is, the last one was about 2 years ago, is a small 220-page regarding future technologies for communications. And we are in the process of redoing it. Hopefully during this first semester of this year, we'll be able to actually conclude that. And that will provide, lots of techie visions. What I expect to happen, and it's curious, I liked Jeff's answer, though I was definitely didn't reach that for the same path than I did. I think at this moment on 5G, we are on the peak of the wrong expectations. And we are going to see the interest for many parties to actually decrease. I would expect that the reaction of that is that we will start paying, more effective attention to what is leading those parties to feel somewhat disappointed with what 5G is bringing them. And at the same time, we are going to learn from those disappointments in order to start designing what 6G will be, trying to avoid the same errors. But since we talked about my experience, and hopefully finding new ways of repeating the same errors in a different flavor. Okay. David is laughing about that.
Yeah, so David, it's a challenging bit as a last, comment, bring some positivity, perhaps.
Yeah, Rui, you're always good at that one. Yeah, thank you. Leave me in. So, yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting how we go forward toward, in the 5G evolution, 6G revolution. How are people going to react? I think we sometimes get a bit confused by what's going to be deployed in the short term, what's going to be researched in the medium to long term. And I think I'm pretty keen to see how, even still 4G systems are going to be improved, 5G systems rolled out to augment those systems, and 6G being a bit more revolutionary and improve that quality of value of society and so on. Let's see how it goes, but I will always advocate, let's go for the security view. Let's improve that. It's a risk, it's a problem. Let's work together on that for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. So so we are at the third year of 5G deployment, and certainly UK has gained a vast amount of experience in deploying, trialing 5G, as we heard earlier in this morning session. Lots of capabilities, experience, collaboration, fostering, etc. And I'm concluding this session with a positive note that there are still several years to go ahead in terms of 5G deployment. And if you want to learn a bit more about the activities in UK 5G, for example, and the experience and the expectation in terms of availability of devices, availability of the different features, and tune in to the UK5G.org website as well. So there will be publications in terms of roadmap coming up. So just to conclude, 5G rollout is a marathon, not a sprint. So keeping that note, I'd like to thank my panelists, David, Jeff, Joanne, and Hui. I'd like to hand over back to Abdulatif for the conclusion remarks.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for your excellent moderation of this session. And I would like to thank all the panelists for the rich discussion. So in fact, personally, I have learned a lot of things about what's ongoing internationally, and I hope that all this will inspire for setting more bridges between the UK ecosystem activities and the international level. And now I will ask all the panelists to switch off their cameras. I think it's already done, and also mute their microphones, and we will move to our next part of the webinar. And before going to the closing of the webinar, I would like to inform you that we'll have another webinar in this series that will be organized on the 10th of March. And we'll focus on accelerating adoption and future opportunities. So please, if you would like to complete your view and vision on industrial 5G, be with us on March, and you can register in the link that you see in the screen, and that is also shared in the comments box. Well, after these short advertisements, let's come back to our webinar and to learn about all the key takeaways. And I will let my colleague Alistair to give us summary and key points from our today's presentations and panel. Alistair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Abdelatif. Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay,
very well.
Thanks. Always need to check. I jotted down notes during the talks, thank you very much for those. I think we've all taken lessons from deployment, that it's not plug and play, that you can't just share infrastructure locally. Lots of tuning to do, new facilities coming on. This is characteristic of, I think, the stage of the deployment. Devices, yes, I hear very much what GSA, Jeff Travis said. We're over the first hurdle there. There's lots of power. The spectrum situation was problematic at first, but it has sort of sorted itself out. Security, obviously, this has had quite a high profile. It's not just a network problem, looking at device identity, end-to-end stuff, DLT, blockchain, zero trust, and the need for a common approach and interoperability for risk assessment. Use cases, we saw many of the expected benefits, but still a lot of work to do, especially on AR and VR, video. So it was an interesting thing for me to see that IoT isn't just the slow, low duty cycle devices. And thank you very much to the panel. Repeat that the first hurdles have been overcome. We must generalize and scale. And finally, all this has got to be useful and usable and create value, else there's no point to it. So the reaching out to the wider public, getting the common language is for me anyway, a big priority for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair, for the summary, and thank you for all our speakers and the panelists. And also great thanks to the whole attendees, and I hope to see you in the next webinar on the 10th of March. So have a nice day. Thank you very much.